We all know that Dragon Ball has a very complex god hierarchy. Well, in reality, it's not that complex, but it can get confusing because when Dragon Ball Super came along, there were a bunch of new gods that were introduced, and we went much higher in the hierarchy than before. When the original manga ended and when Dragon Ball Z came to a close, the highest gods that we knew about were the Supreme Kais, the Kaioshin. Dragon Ball Super, and actually Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, the movie that came out 2 years before Super, introduced God of Destruction Beerus and opened up the hierarchy. So I want to go through the god hierarchy one by one, but I want to begin first of all with the elders and the hermits of Dragon Ball, because they are usually the lower level gods, and they are usually people who set the groundwork for the god hierarchy later. Most of these characters originated in the original Dragon Ball anime and manga, and then of course when Z began, we were introduced to the Kais, to the afterlife, to King Yemma, and all those characters. Let's go back to the beginning and discuss the Grand Elders of Dragon Ball and talk about where they stand on the pecking order. These characters are way more important than you realize and helped shape this world. Let's get to it on this edition of the Cosmology Guide. Right now, back in the Geekdom 101 store, the vintage Dragon Ball Super Mario Bros. 3 Fusion merch. You can get shirts, hoodies, different types of styles. You can get an art piece, and it ships anywhere in the world, almost anywhere, in various colors and sizes. Only available for a limited time. Do not wait. Get yours today. The link will be down below. So the word of the day today is Sennin. Now, Sennin in Japanese means hermit, and it's a word that comes up time and time again in Dragon Ball. Within the world of Dragon Ball, hermits are known as wise teachers that in some cases have supernatural abilities and are part of the god hierarchy. For example, Master Roshi is known in Japan as Kame Sennin, which means turtle hermit. In the 22nd tournament, the teacher of Ten Shinhan and Chaozu is known as the Sudu Sennin, the crane hermit. The dub created the name Master Shen. He is not called that at all in the manga or in the Japanese version. It's just the name they came up with for the dub, not even doing 5 minutes of research to find out there's another character in Dragon Ball named Shen who would appear in the next tournament. So these two are wise old teachers. Now, I'm bringing this up early on because there is a statement made about Master Roshi in the Japanese version of Dragon Ball that has probably confused some people into thinking he might be more than meets the eye. And that is that he's referred to as the god of martial arts. Now, that's a very complimentary thing to say about the man, and he certainly is a very experienced and seasoned martial artist. He's not literally a god, though. However, he absolutely has to have a supernatural past, because not only does he have knowledge living for years and years, but his sister is Fortune Teller Baba. Now, Fortune Teller Baba is a very important demigod in the world of Dragon Ball because she has the ability to bring somebody back to life after they've died from the afterlife for 24 hours. We see this with Grandpa Gohan in Dragon Ball, and then later with Goku in the Majin Buu saga of Dragon Ball Z. Now, how she got this job and where she's actually from, same thing with Roshi, is a mystery. We don't know, we may never know. But nevertheless, she works alongside King Yemma, and both of them would be considered demigods in the world of Dragon Ball. King Yemma, of course, is known in Japan as Enma Daio, which is Lord Enma. He is the one that judges the dead when they pass away and determines whether or not they go to heaven or they go to hell. Of course, there's other options, such as what happened to Goku when he was granted the ability to go train with Kaio-sama, aka King Kai, to prepare for his battle with the Saiyans within a year. The concept behind King Yema is one that exists in Chinese mythology going back centuries. He even appears in other forms of media besides just Dragon Ball. He is what I would consider a demigod. Now, another very well-known demigod who's also a senin is Corin, known in the dub as Corin, the cat from Corin Tower. So the place where Corin is at is Carinto, which is Corin Tower, and it's in the middle of a place in the world called the Sacred Corin Lands. So the lands are named after the cat, and these lands are sacred. This is where Upa and Bora live, and they take care of the land. The reason why they're sacred is because we find out deeper into the story of Dragon Ball that the Corin Tower leads to Master Corin, where one can train in the martial arts. Goku becomes the second person in the series to climb it when Corin reveals that Master Roshi was able to climb it first, many years before. The big secret about the sacred Corin lands and Corin Tower is that this place connects humanity with the kingdom of God. Because the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z English dubs were so heavily censored, a lot of this was lost in context. This is a big reason why I always tell people to watch it subtitled, because you're missing out on the real story. This is a great example. The power pole, as it's called in the dub, it's called the Nyoibo in the Japanese version of Dragon Ball and in the original manga, is more than just Goku's fighting stick. This magical wand, this magical staff, connects from the top of Corin Tower to what is known as the Heavenly Realm or the Heavenly Temple. In the dub, it's just called the Lookout or Kami's Lookout. This is because when they were first producing the English dub, they had to be very careful because they didn't want to include any kind of religious iconography, which is why words like God, demon, devil, hell, these words were centered or changed. So when you climb into the sacred heavenly realm, that's where Mr. Popo and Kami lives. Now, in the dub, they just call him Kami. They just brought the name over from Japan. But the word Kami in Japan literally means God. He is, in Dragon Ball, the God of Earth. The dub calls this title the Guardian of Earth. Like I said, they censor things, they kidify it, they change it around, and thus you lose context of the importance of these characters. Kami is a very important character because he's the one that created the Earth Dragon Balls. We find out later on in the series that he, as God, was not like the Judeo-Christian God who has no beginning or end. Kami had to earn his position as God of Earth by becoming completely purified, and he did this by expelling all of the evil out of his body, which manifested itself and created Demon King Piccolo, because at one time they were one being. Then, of course, in the middle of Dragon Ball Z, during the Cell Saga, Piccolo and Kami fuse once again to create the original son of Katatsu, the nameless Namekian. Kami was the first god that we saw in Dragon Ball. Mr. Popo is his attendant, and Mr. Popo has been there since even the previous god. The Dragon Ball guidebook Daizenshuu 7 reveals that both Mr. Popo and Corin have origins in the afterlife, in the other world. The purpose of God, Mr. Popo, and Corin is to bring balance to the planet, and we find out in Daizenshuu 7 that the gods of the afterlife send gods to other planets, Earth being one of them, to govern them as individual gods to protect those particular planets. It also reveals in Daizenshuu 7 that these gods are there to oversee and protect the planet's sentient life forms. It reads, but beyond this, the main goal is to stimulate an immature sentient species growth, guiding it towards the greatest happiness. However, don't get it twisted. Mr. Popo and Corin are not actually God. Instead, Daizenshuu 7 reveals that God is usually determined by a member of the civilization of Earth. And it just so happened that at the time that our Kami, who was later revealed to be of Namekian origin, became God, he was already living on Earth and attained the throne after passing certain tests. So Mr. Popo and Corin were sent there from the afterlife to devote themselves to supporting Kami, or whoever the god would be of that planet. It's implied that every planet has a god, but that is not true because we see multiple planets in Dragon Ball that don't have gods, or at least we don't see the gods. Earth, however, always had Kami, and later Dende would take the role of god. There was a god prior to Kami, and there's a story in Dragon Ball Z Movie 1 about how Garlic Sr. competed with Kami for the role of god. This was anime only in that film and nowhere to be found in the manga. This, while it did add lore to the story, was not part of Toriyama's vision of how these things work. The Garlic Jr. Saga, the sequel to the Dead Zone film that was anime only, adds even more lore to the events that happened before Kami became the Earth's god. In that arc, the one that we know as Kami and Piccolo, in an attempt to reverse the effects of the Blackwater Mist, travel into the lower region of the temple and end up having a confrontation with what appears to be the ghost of the previous god, who seems to be angry that an alien was allowed to become the god of Earth, which is strange because it's implied in the Garlic Jr. movie that it was all part of the rite of passage and that he knew about it. However, it may have been another previous god that we were never told about. Daizenshu Guidebook number 7 gives us even more information expounding upon this lore. In that guidebook, it states that the previous generation's god, the previous generation's Kami, has no physical body, but his spirit is in a place within the sacred temple known as the Divine Sage Realm. This is the first and only time that this was ever mentioned. Although there is more lore about the Blackwater Mist, known as the Aqua Mist. Apparently it was something that belonged to the previous generation's god, probably the same one that had the confrontation with Kami down there. Me being a fan of lore, I like this kind of stuff, except that it's anime only, and because of that, Toriyama never wrote it, thus it's never really expounded upon. And you'll notice that with a lot of these anime only things, you'll notice it as this video progresses too, they just drop the idea or drop the story because Toriyama's manga goes in a different direction and the anime tries to follow it. This is why we don't have much more information about the previous gods, the Aqua Mist, or anything like that. I still like the ideas, it's just I wish they were better fleshed out. Now, on some planets, the gods aren't necessarily referred to as gods. For example, on planet Namek, there's a character there by the name of the Grand Elder, known as Saichoro in the Japanese version, and in the English dub, his name was changed to Guru, probably because it's easier to say than Saichoro. Well, the Grand Elder of Namek sort of acts like the god of that planet. He's the leader, he's the one that's the oldest there, who has birthed almost everybody on planet Namek. They all come from him. Dragon Ball Daima revealed that the Demon Realm is the original home of the Namekians, and that they migrated into the universe and went to planet Namek thousands of years ago. I'll be doing a follow-up video discussing just the Namekians in detail, and I'll go into the Grand Elder as well as this entire thing and their entire history on that edition of the Cosmology Guide coming in the future. Now, I do want to discuss some of the demigods that were anime only. In Dragon Ball Episode 81, Goku traveled to a place known as the Demon Realm. Now, the Demon Realm he traveled to here is not the same Demon Realm that Toriyama created later on that would be the centerpiece of Dragon Ball Daima. This is something completely different that was made for the Dragon Ball anime and not in the manga and not part of Toriyama's vision. The only way for it to make sense and fit into the continuity along with the Makai demon realm from Daima is if you sort of picture the demon realm that Goku went to in Dragon Ball as being a completely different demon realm than the one that we know of that can only be accessed through the warp fish at the ends of the galaxy. Now, I produced an entire video already years ago here on the channel about that episode, all about Goku going to the Demon Land in that episode. So for more details, make sure you check that video out. Then we have Goku's run-in with a demigod known as Anin. This is an anime-only story arc that took place at the very end of the original Dragon Ball, right before Dragon Ball Z began. Anin is considered a demigod, aka a goddess guardian of this magical artifact, this magical location called the Furnace of Eight Divinations. The Furnace of Eight Divinations is something that isn't even remotely hinted at or mentioned whatsoever in the manga. It's something that Takao Koyama and the writers of the Dragon Ball anime had come up with for the final 5 episodes of Dragon Ball, which are commonly referred to as the wedding dress arc, where Goku has to put out the fires of the Ox King's palace that can't be put out any other way. Goku and Chi-Chi head to a place known as the Mountain of 5 Elements. Now, what are the 5 elements? This is something that, again, is borrowed from ancient mythology. The 5 elements in Chinese mythology and Chinese medicine are fire, earth, water, metal, and wood. Now, what I'm telling you about is not mentioned in the series because it's actual real-world Chinese mythology. And to this day, many in the Far East rely on the idea of these 5 elements when it comes to Asian alternative medicine and healing. Feel free to do your own research on this so you can learn more about it. But within the world of Dragon Ball, this is the reason as to why the Ox King's palace's fire won't stop. And this area is supposed to connect the world of the living with the afterlife. And the way it's explained in Dragon Ball is that this fire controls everything, and if at some point the fire is ever fully put out, all of the elements of the living world would basically implode. There's a hole there, and Goku has to plug it up in order to save the Ox King's palace and stop the fires from burning everything to the ground. When it comes to the goddess or demigod Anin, very little is revealed about her. She's very tall and has this funny relationship with Grandpa Gohan. This is actually the last time that we see Grandpa Gohan in the series, and I was happy that the writers of the anime brought him back for just one scene so that he could actually see Goku grown up now and they could have that moment. Anin has been in this location for 10,000 years. A lot of this story is mimicking an old Journey to the West parable with Sun Wukong and Laozi. And Anin basically takes the place of Laozi, and of course Goku is Sun Wukong. In fact, they are both referred to as Taijo Rokun. This was Goku's first encounter ever with a god that existed in the afterlife beyond just Kami, before even King Yemma, but this was anime only. And while I'm not here to have a canon debate, to a lot of people, these events never happened. Some of the other demigods that Goku would meet anime only is, for example, in Dragon Ball Z episode 14, the Snake Princess, known as Princess Snake. She is supposed to be the ruler of Snake Way right at the midway point, and Goku makes her acquaintance in the episode. She wants to do things with Goku until she finds out that Goku's married and has kids, and then she tries to eat him. Goku, of course, luckily got out of that situation. There's some lore here that she apparently had some kind of relationship with King Yemma in the past, but there really isn't much else other than her being this sort of demigod from the afterlife, and we don't really see her again. There's a small cameo of her palace when Goku's coming back, but that's about it. Another anime-only demigod appeared in Dragon Ball GT episode 43. During the 2-on-1 fight in Hell, where Goku battled Frieza and Cell, he was sent down to a place they referred to as the Hell of Hells and met this mysterious old woman named Roba, who literally translates to old woman. I think her name in the English dub was Enma, but I haven't seen that dub in years, so I don't know what they called her. But basically, her duties, much like Anin, it's an anime-only demigod. Her duties are to torture and punish people who misbehave in hell. Now, the ironic thing is that people get sent to hell anyways for misbehaving, but this is what happens if you misbehave in the place filled with people who misbehave. Very wacky. She has various different ways of torturing people, but what ends up happening is she tries to torture Goku by using this ice machine on him, and what ends up happening is it doesn't work because Goku's not actually dead at the time of the ice machine being put upon him. The ice machine only works on people who are dead. Therefore, Goku uses that same machine to freeze Cell and Frieza and then breaks them into pieces. Once again, this is anime only and nowhere to be found in any of the Toriyama works, and I don't believe we ever saw her ever again. In future editions of the Cosmology Guide, I'll go into the Kais, the Supreme Kais, the Gods of Destruction, the Angels, and everything else in between, as well as exploring more of the realms that encompass the cosmos of Dragon Ball. In the meantime, I have some videos on your screen right now that you should watch to learn more about this wonderful series. I'll catch you in the next one.